In the mountains of feudal Japan, there lived a young potter named Hana who dreamed of creating ceramics as beautiful as those made by the legendary master craftsmen. She traveled far to apprentice under Master Sato, an elderly potter whose vessels were prized by nobles throughout the land. On her first day, Hana arrived with a notebook filled with her own creative ideas and unique designs she had sketched. She was eager to show the master her vision, to discuss her theories about clay composition, and to experiment with new glazing techniques she had read about. Master Sato looked at her notebook, smiled gently, and closed it. For the next 6 months, he gave Hana only one task. Each morning, she was to center a ball of clay on the wheel, pull it into a simple bowl shape, and then destroy it. Every single day. The same basic bowl, hundreds of them. Never fired, never glazed, never kept. Just practiced and destroyed. Hana grew frustrated. She had not traveled all this way to make the same boring bowl over and over. She wanted to create, to innovate, to express her unique artistic vision. One evening, as she destroyed yet another practice bowl, she confronted her master. "When will you teach me the secrets of truly great pottery?" she asked, barely hiding her impatience. Master Sato picked up a stone from the garden. "Do you see this rock?" he asked. "It wishes to be a mountain, but a mountain is not built in a day. It is built grain by grain, layer by layer, each particle settling perfectly upon the last. You cannot leap to the summit. You must learn to walk the path." This teaching reveals an ancient Japanese concept called Shu-Ha-Ri, which describes the 3 essential stages every person must pass through on the journey from beginner to master. This path has guided samurai warriors, tea ceremony practitioners, calligraphers, and craftspeople for centuries. Today, this same wisdom offers a powerful framework for anyone seeking to master any skill in our modern world. The concept of Shu-Ha-Ri comes from the Japanese martial arts, particularly Aikido, though its roots trace back even further to No theater and the tea ceremony. The 3 characters that form this concept tell us the story of transformation. Shu means to protect, to keep, to obey. Ha means to break, to detach, to diverge. Ri means to leave, to separate, to transcend. Together, they describe not just a learning process, but a complete philosophy of mastery that stands in stark contrast to how most people approach skill development today. In our modern world, we have been conditioned to seek shortcuts. We want the advanced techniques immediately. We watch a video, read a book, or attend a workshop, and we believe we understand. We collect information like we collect possessions, mistaking the accumulation of knowledge for the embodiment of skill. We want to skip the boring basics and jump straight to the impressive results, but the samurai understood something crucial that we have forgotten. True mastery cannot be rushed. It must be earned through a specific sequence of stages, and attempting to skip even one step undermines the entire journey. Let us explore each stage of this ancient path and discover how it applies to mastering any skill in your modern life. The first stage is Shu, which we might translate as the way of following or the path of discipline. In this beginning phase, the student approaches learning with what the Japanese call shoshin, or beginner's mind. This is not merely about being new to something. It is about cultivating a specific attitude of humble receptivity, where the student becomes like an empty vessel, ready to be filled with the master's teaching. During the Shu stage, the student has one primary task: to follow the instructions of a single teacher with complete faithfulness. Not to understand why, not to question, not to modify, but simply to copy exactly what the teacher demonstrates. This may seem passive or even mindless to the modern mind, but the ancient masters understood something about learning that neuroscience is only now confirming. The body must learn before the mind can understand. Muscle memory must be built before intellectual comprehension can have any foundation on which to stand. Think of Hana at the potter's wheel, making the same basic bowl hundreds of times. With each repetition, her hands learned the proper pressure, her body learned the correct posture, her eyes learned to see the subtle changes in the clay. This was not wasted time. It was essential foundation building. The techniques were becoming internalized, moving from conscious effort to unconscious competence. This is the gift of the Shu stage. It creates what martial artists call kihon, the fundamental movements that become so deeply ingrained they require no thought. In practical terms, if you are learning to code, the Shu stage means following tutorials exactly as written, copying the syntax precisely, building the same projects your instructor builds. If you are learning to play piano, it means practicing the scales your teacher assigns in exactly the manner demonstrated, even when it feels tedious. If you are learning to write, it means studying the masters and deliberately imitating their structures, their rhythms, their techniques. You are not trying to be original. You are trying to absorb the fundamentals so completely that they become second nature. The Shu stage teaches discipline over motivation. In this phase, you practice not when you feel inspired, but because practice is what you do. You show up consistently, repeat the basics endlessly, and trust the process even when progress seems invisible. This echoes the samurai principle of Kaizen, the way of continuous small improvement. Each repetition may seem insignificant, but thousands of repetitions build unshakable foundation. Most people quit during the Shu stage because they find it boring. They see others doing advanced work and they want to be there immediately, but attempting to skip. Shu is like trying to build the second floor of a house before laying the foundation. Eventually, everything collapses. The samurai would say that a warrior who rushes past basic training becomes the first casualty in battle. In modern terms, the programmer who skips fundamentals writes unstable code. The musician who avoids scales never develops proper technique. The writer who refuses to study the craft produces undisciplined work. How long does the Shu stage last? The traditional answer is that the teacher decides when the student is ready to progress. In practical terms, you know you are ready to move beyond Shu when the basic techniques have become automatic. When you can execute the fundamentals correctly without conscious thought. When your body knows what to do before your mind finishes the instruction. This might take months for some skills, years for others. The samurai understood that patience in this stage creates speed in all stages that follow. Now we come to the second stage, Ha, which we might call the way of breaking or the path of understanding. If Shu was about building a solid foundation through imitation, Ha is about understanding the principles beneath the techniques so deeply that you can begin to adapt them. This is where learning becomes more dynamic and the student's own intelligence begins to emerge. Master Sato finally allowed Hana to move beyond the basic bowl, but instead of teaching her fancy techniques, he did something unexpected. He took her to visit 3 other master potters, each with completely different styles. One worked with rough, thick-walled vessels, another created paper-thin porcelain, the third specialized in irregular, asymmetrical forms. He instructed her to study with each of them, to learn their methods, and then to return and tell him what all 3 masters had in common beneath their different approaches. This is the essence of Ha. In this stage, the student is no longer confined to a single teacher's methods. Instead, they begin to explore multiple approaches, study various schools of thought, and learn to see the underlying principles that unite seemingly different techniques. They start to ask why certain methods work. They experiment with modifications. They discover which variations serve specific purposes and which violate fundamental principles. The Ha stage requires strong foundation from Shu. Without solid basics, exposure to multiple approaches creates only confusion. But with fundamentals deeply internalized, studying different methods reveals the deeper patterns of the art. It is like learning multiple languages once you understand grammar. Each new language becomes easier because you recognize the universal structures beneath the different vocabularies. In modern application, if you are a programmer who has mastered basic coding in the Shu stage, the Ha stage means exploring different programming languages, different frameworks, different approaches to solving problems. You begin to see that beneath the surface differences, there are universal principles of logic, structure, and efficiency. If you are a musician, Ha means studying different genres, learning from various teachers, understanding why certain chord progressions create specific emotional effects regardless of the style of music. During Ha, your own personality and preferences begin to shape how you practice the skill. You discover which approaches resonate most strongly with your natural tendencies. You start to modify techniques to better suit your circumstances. You question the rules, not from arrogance but from genuine curiosity about why they exist and when exceptions might be appropriate. This is healthy and necessary. It shows that you are developing true understanding rather than blind obedience. However, the Ha stage contains a hidden danger. Students who reach this level sometimes mistake understanding for mastery. They learn the principles, they can explain the theories, they know multiple approaches, and they begin to think they have arrived. The Japanese call this the Ha trap, the illusion of expertise that prevents true mastery. They have broken free from rigid following. but they have not yet achieved complete transcendence. They are like Hana after studying the three masters, able to discuss different pottery styles, but not yet able to create something truly original and profound. The Ha stage teaches the value of principles over procedures. You learn that there are multiple valid paths to excellence. You discover that rules are not arbitrary restrictions, but condensed wisdom that can be adapted once understood. You develop what the samurai call fudoshin, the immovable mind that can encounter new situations without being shaken, because it understands the fundamental principles that apply regardless of circumstances. How do you know when you are ready to move beyond Ha? When you can not only perform the techniques and explain the principles, but when you can teach others effectively, adapting your instruction to their unique needs. When you can look at a problem and intuitively sense which approach from your expanded toolkit is most appropriate. When the principles have become so internalized that they guide your actions without conscious deliberation. Finally, we reach the third stage, Ri, which means to transcend or the way of mastery. This is where the student becomes truly independent, no longer requiring a teacher because all learning now comes from their own practice and reflection. In this stage, the practitioner has so completely absorbed the fundamentals and so deeply understood the principles that they can now act from pure spontaneity while still honoring the essence of the art. After years of dedicated practice, Hana returned to her wheel, but something had changed. She no longer thought about hand position or clay consistency or wheel speed. She no longer consciously applied the techniques she had learned or the principles she had studied. Instead, her hands moved with their own intelligence. Each vessel emerged as a unique expression of the moment, shaped by her complete presence with the clay. Her work bore the unmistakable mark of Master Sato's lineage, yet it was entirely her own. She had not rejected her training. She had so completely integrated it that it had disappeared into her being, leaving only pure creative expression. This is Ri, not abandoning the forms but transcending them, not forgetting the principles but embodying them so completely that they operate beneath conscious awareness. The practitioner at this stage acts with what martial artists call mushin, or no mind, not the absence of thought but freedom from the interference of thinking. The right action arises spontaneously from deep competence. In the Ri stage, innovation becomes natural and appropriate. The master creates new techniques not from rebellion against tradition, but from such deep alignment with the tradition's essence that novel expressions emerge organically. They can break rules with wisdom because they understand not just what the rules are, but why they exist and what purposes they serve. Their violations of form honor the spirit. For modern learners, reaching Ri means you have internalized a skill so completely that you no longer think about it. The writer at this level doesn't consciously apply story structure or character development techniques. They simply write, and the story emerges with inherent structure because the principles have become their natural mode of expression. The programmer creates elegant code without consciously applying design patterns. The patterns are simply how they think. The Ri stage is also marked by the ability to teach the skill to others from any stage. The master can guide Shu students with patient repetition, challenge Ha students with deep questions, and mentor emerging Ri practitioners with subtle observations. They can communicate at all levels because they have walked the complete path and remember each stage intimately. It is important to understand that Ri is not a fixed destination, but a continuous process. Even masters return to basics regularly, practicing fundamental techniques not to improve them, but to maintain connection with the essence of the art. This is what the tea ceremony practitioners call Shu in Ri, keeping the beginner's dedication alive even at the master's level. The circle completes itself. The master becomes the beginner once again, but with completely transformed understanding. There is a profound teaching embedded in the structure of Shu-Ha-Ri that speaks directly to our modern struggles with learning. We live in an age of unprecedented access to information. We can watch tutorials from world-class experts, read books by masters, and access courses on any subject imaginable. Yet despite this abundance of resources, true mastery seems more elusive than ever. Why? Because we have confused information with transformation. We have mistaken knowing about something for knowing how to do something. We skip Shu because it seems too basic. We rush through Ha because we are impatient. We proclaim ourselves at Ri after reading a few books and watching some videos. But this is like claiming to be a master potter after seeing pictures of beautiful ceramics. The knowing must be embodied, not just intellectually understood. The path of Shu-Ha-Ri offers several crucial insights for modern skill building. First, it reminds us that sequence matters. Each stage builds necessarily upon the previous one. You cannot develop genuine flexibility in Ha without first developing the solid foundation of Shu. You cannot achieve the transcendent mastery of Ri without first gaining the deep understanding of Ha. Trying to skip stages does not save time. It guarantees failure, or worse, produces the illusion of competence that prevents real learning. Second, Shu-Ha-Ri teaches us to honor each stage for its unique gifts rather than rushing through to the next. The discipline of Shu builds character and creates unshakable foundation. The exploration of Ha develops wisdom and adaptability. The spontaneity of Ri creates innovation and artistry. Each stage has irreplaceable value. Each stage deserves your full presence and patience. Third, this path reveals that mastery is not about talent, but about process. Hana did not create beautiful pottery because she was naturally gifted. She created beautiful pottery because she was willing to make the same basic bowl hundreds of times when it seemed pointless. Because she studied multiple teachers when she had already learned one method. Because she continued practicing even after she had achieved technical competence. The path itself creates the master if the student is willing to walk it completely. Finally, Shu-Ha-Ri reminds us that real learning happens in the body, not just the mind. Reading about how to do something is not learning. Watching videos about techniques is not training. True skill develops through physical repetition until the knowledge becomes cellular, woven into your nervous system, expressed through your actions without the intermediary of thought. If you wish to apply the wisdom of Shu-Ha-Ri to your own skill development, begin by honestly assessing where you currently stand. Are you truly in Shu, building your foundation through disciplined repetition of basics? Or have you tried to skip ahead to more interesting techniques before the fundamentals became automatic? If you are learning something new, commit to the Shu stage fully. Find one good teacher or one solid method and follow it faithfully without modification for at least several months. Resist the temptation to sample multiple approaches before you have built basic competence. Practice the fundamentals daily, even when they seem boring. Especially when they seem boring. Remember that boredom is often a sign that the conscious mind is disengaging, which allows the unconscious integration that creates true skill. Track your consistency rather than your progress. Show up every day, execute the basics, and trust that foundation is being built beneath the surface. When you notice that basic techniques have become automatic, when you can execute them correctly without conscious thought, then you are ready to explore Ha. At this point, actively seek out different teachers, various approaches, alternative perspectives. Study how masters with different styles handle similar challenges. But as you explore, always look for the underlying principles that unite different methods rather than getting lost in surface variations. Ask why things work the way they do. Experiment with modifications, but do so systematically, changing one variable at a time so you can understand the effects. Document what you learn. Teaching others, even informally, is one of the fastest ways to deepen your own understanding during the Ha stage. Explaining the principles to someone else forces you to articulate what you know at a deeper level. The transition to Ri cannot be forced. It emerges naturally when Ha has been fully explored. You will know you have reached Ri when you stop thinking about technique during performance, when solutions to new problems arise spontaneously from your integrated knowledge, when you can create innovations that honor tradition rather than merely rebelling against it, when teaching becomes effortless because you can perceive exactly what each student needs. But even in Ri, return regularly to Shu. Practice the basics with the same dedication you did as a beginner, but now with the understanding of a master. This keeps your foundation strong and prevents the arrogance that causes even masters to decline. The circle must be complete. Shu contains Ha, Ha contains Ri, and Ri returns to Shu. The samurai understood that mastery is not a destination, but a way of moving through life. They did not train to reach some final end point where training would no longer be necessary. They trained because training itself was the expression of their commitment to excellence, to discipline, to the path of continuous refinement. This is the deepest teaching of Shu-Ha-Ri. The stages are not obstacles to get past, but sacred ground to be honored. In our modern world where everything promises instant results, where expertise is claimed after superficial exposure, where depth is sacrificed for speed, the ancient path of Shu-Ha-Ri offers a countercultural wisdom. It says that real mastery takes time, that shortcuts lead nowhere, that the fundamentals deserve your respect and your patience, that following before leading, learning before teaching, and embodying before innovating are not old-fashioned ideas, but timeless truths about how human excellence develops. So whether you are learning a musical instrument or a programming language, developing athletic ability or creative skill, building professional expertise or personal capacity, the path remains the same. Begin in Shu with humble discipline, progress to Ha with curious exploration, arrive at Ri through devoted practice, and then begin again, for the way of mastery has no end, only deeper circles of understanding. As Master Sato told Hana on the day she finally created a vessel worthy of a master, the clay has not changed. Your hands have not changed. What has changed is that you and the clay are no longer separate. You have walked the path until the path walked through you. This is Shu-Ha-Ri, this is the way. And write in comments that I will walk the path of mastery with patience and presence. Thank you for watching.